race series. It is a 25-minute race in prospect. All of these cars are with 1600cc Ford engines. It's a mixture of the 270Rs, the 310Rs and the older Supersport cars. And the 1600 engine, albeit with the 310R taking a slight advantage with variable cam timing version of the engine and a Mazda gearbox compared to the Ford gearbox that you find on the older Supersport. They are still even in match cars, and they deliver very good racing indeed. There are one or two spots of rain in the air as the cars come to the line in anticipation of this first of two races of the weekend. The championship began a month ago at Donington, and wins were split there between Don Henschel, who's missing this weekend, and Gary Smith. Now, Gary himself lines up only on the third row of the grid. Michael O'Reilly is the man that is on pole position, and he had a fifth and a second from Donington, and therefore is third in the championship. And it's Stuart Bell in the red car that lines up alongside. He's fifth in the championship after taking a third in one race and an eighth in the other. There is Stuart Bell in the LFP Motorsport prepared car on the outside of the front row of the grid. As ever with Caterham Racing, you can anticipate lots of slipstreaming, lots of overtaking, and you don't necessarily want to make your bid for freedom too early. Towards the end of the race might just do you, but the gamble there is external factors, like yesterday in the 420R race, which was stopped early because of an incident, and anybody planning their move for the last lap was deprived of the opportunity. It wasn't restarted. So there's always that gamble, but one thing is guaranteed pretty much in Caterham Racing, and that is that there's going to be loads of battling, loads of overtaking. That's Jeff Newman, another of the LFP Motorsport drivers, sixth in the championship. He is coming to this second weekend, and lining up alongside him, number 31, Marco Aghem, hill climber, Carter, Mazda MX-5 racer turned Caterham racer, pretty experienced in competition terms, and he is aboard number 31. As you look at Caroline Everett's blue car, ninth in the championship, number 9. And just ahead, 99, is the Team Parker racing car of Cameron Cooper. So the grid is complete, the countdown is done, and the officials now make their way off the grid in anticipation of this rolling start. 30-second board has just been shown, not the start of the race, but one last chance to get a bit of warmth into the Toyo rubber. All classes in this championship use Toyo's R888R GG compound tyre, give good grip levels in wet and dry. They're affordable, they're durable, and quite important at the moment, they're readily available. So, formation lap is underway. The cars make their way off towards paddock as you look there at number 93, which is Andrew Donaldson's Welch Motorsport entry, and an opportunity to jink left and right, try and get some warmth into the tyres as the cars head up the hill. It was warm and sunny earlier. It's clouded over a bit. There are one or two spots of rain in the air, but hopefully that's not going to affect life as we get ready for this first of the two races for the 1600s. Michael O'Reilly and Stuart Bell then share the front row of the grid with Jeff Newman and Marco Aghem on row 2. The third row is where you find Gary Smith, the championship leader, and Cameron Cooper lines up alongside him ahead of Mark Roberts and Caroline Everett starting 8th. The fifth row, Luke Rosewell, number 47, alongside David Yates. The sixth row, John Styring and Andrew Donaldson ahead of Rob Warner and Paul Setti. On the 8th row, there's Paul Wells and the experienced Andy Ebden ahead of Colin Loughlin and Greg Hyatt, who will go from the outside of row 9. Row 10 is where you find Scott Parker and Rob Good, the Stone supplier. And the 11th row, Dave Antrobus on the inside, the man from Warrington, and Jason McCormack rounds out the grid. Now, Jason is one to watch. He's a late entry to the point that he didn't get a time in qualifying. He's at the back of the grid, but he's also doing the 420R races. He's a very experienced Caterham racer, and yesterday got third place in the 420R element of the weekend's racing. So from the back of the grid, watch the progress of Jason McCormack up through the field. A win might be a tall order in race 1. Certainly he could do it in race 2, but he might even get himself up towards the podium. He's got the racecraft to do it. So the cars come towards Stirlings. They get themselves into this Noah's Ark formation, ready for the rolling start. And this split of, as I say, the 270s, the 310s and the Supersport cars, they all go under the general umbrella of Caterham 1600s for the purposes of this series. The safety car as it is, the pace car will peel into the pit lane. The race will get underway. Down towards Clearways they turn. And the last couple of cars on the grid, certainly in the case of Jason McCormack, he's got work to do, but he's equal to the task. So the lights are extinguished, the pace car brings them to clearways, then it will peel into the pit lane. We have got 22 cars in total, and you can anticipate another fierce fight as up towards the line they come. Michael O'Reilly it is, third in the championship, on pole position. With him at the front, Stuart Bell. The run towards paddock as ever is going to be absolutely crucial as the lights are about to be extinguished. The race to get underway then, and we go racing now with a good getaway being made by Jeff Newman on the inside from the second row, but his path rather blocked there by Michael O'Reilly, and there's drama already heading for the barriers, and a big whack there eliminates, was that number 22, I fear, Gary Smith. And if I'm right, then that is the championship leader gone even before the first corner. So there was a tangle in the pack. It looks like it was Gary Smith that came off worse, slithered across the grass, whacked the wall, and that is going to bring out, I would have thought, the safety car, because if that car's got suspension damage, maybe a wheel off, it's going to be very tricky to move that. Let's check as the leaders dash along Cooper Straight for the first time. I'm telling you a lie, it wasn't Gary Smith in 22. He's there in the pack. It was somebody from lower down the field. 77 it was, John Styring, so he's okay. Gary Smith is okay as far as his race is concerned. John Styring, 77 it was, forgive me, that was the one that got caught up in the drama. And looking out of the window to see whether or not that car has got away, the answer seemingly is no. So the race leaders dive down towards Hawthorns for the first time, and Michael O'Reilly from pole position trying to make good his escape. Lots of squealing of tyres as the cars push. What have we got for the lead? 5 in a line, but it is up front at the moment. Number 13, Michael O'Reilly, the man from Weybridge in the Matt Blythe Motorsport car, coming under attack from Jeff Newman up from the second row of the grid then. Up towards Sheen Curve they go. This has been a corner catching out many this weekend. Some clip the curb on the inside and it spits the car out wide. Others arrive too quickly and run out wide. Gary Smith then, third, the championship leader. Much mopping of brows. It wasn't him that got involved in the dramas on the opening corner, but now he's got the chance to make progress. The championship leader coming now down towards clearways. Tries the outside against Jeff Newman. He's also coming under attack himself as they head up towards the timing line now. And it looks as though, seeing that we've gone through the opening lap without interruption, that the road is clear. Let's check as they go up towards Paddock Hill Bend. The road is indeed clear, and again with late braking and tyres are squealing. Battle on for second, third and fourth as Gary Smith gets run out wide. Marco Agam makes his move up on the inside line there, and all of that is enabling the leader, look, Michael O'Reilly, to get away. Jeff Newman is second. Gary Smith fights back on the outside, but he's going to have Agam with him as they drop downhill once again. And Jason McCormack has gone missing somewhere on that first lap, or he's got a transponder glitch. I was saying he was one to watch. He's got no transponder. So he is in the race, but for the moment, the data coming from that car not telling us whether he's making progress or not. So that car up from the back of the grid needs to be manually put into the results somehow. We'll check that next time over the line. But as I say, he's one to watch up from the back of the grid as Michael O'Reilly, led at the end of the opening lap by 0.4 of a second, tries to make good his escape. Jason McCormack is up into 13th place, so he is making good progress as there, number 31, Marco Agam, battles with Caroline Everett now. Replay of the start. Now, have a look to the right-hand side of the road, because as the pack goes up, yes, there's contact from behind. It just turns John Styring around and bang, into the barrier he goes, rips off the front right corner. But the car thankfully dragged out of the way. From another angle, let's see, I think it was the car behind him actually that was a little bit keen. Goes for the inside, and as the road then tapers, there's the contact, because the car directly behind on the grid, that of Rob Warner, then had to try and get back onto the racetrack and got into the side of John Styring's car as it did so. A little bit like actually an accident we had earlier on in the day in the GT World Challenge race here at Brands Hatch. So, thankfully, the road is clear. John Styring able to get the remains off the racetrack as the leaders go by. And it is Michael O'Reilly now ahead of Gary Smith, who's worked his way ahead of Jeff Newman for second place. David Yates also making progress in fourth as they round Paddock Hill Bend once more. Now the climb up towards Druids. And as they brake hard and turn into the tight right-hand hairpin, number 19 in the midst of all of the squabbles there, Stuart Bell. Now, he was on the front row of the grid, and right now he's in 9th place. So Stuart Bell lost out at the start in the red car and has got a lot of work to do to fight back, because here now, look, the leading trio getting away. Jeff Newman is back up into second, so he's got himself ahead of Gary Smith and now goes for the lead. Jeff Newman with the yellow cage adorning the car. The rest of the field all streams through, in the midst of which, as I say, Stuart Bell to the grass there went Gary Smith as he tries to retake second place. That little kink coming out of Surtees down towards Hawthorns. They use the grass, and a change for the lead and almost a change for second place, because Jeff Newman goes through and Gary Smith thought about following him. Now he makes his move on the inside at Westfield, but to no avail. So early leader Michael O'Reilly drops back. 5 minutes nearly done, and it is now Jeff Newman up from the second row of the grid, who leads the way. The local man comes from Sevenoaks. And into the mix now is David Yates, number 15, the blue car with the white cage. Next in the queue, the construction company director, David Yates, like many of them on this grid, who came out of the Caterham Academy, the category aimed at the drivers that have got no previous motorsport circuit experience. And he's worked his way through the ranks as now for the race lead on the inside line. Fighting back, Michael O'Reilly tries to prise open the door, but he can't do it. Up towards the line they come now. Over the timing line, 3 wide, nearly 4, because David Yates gets up the inside. On the outside is Gary Smith, but it's Michael O'Reilly who goes back into the race lead. Over the curb goes Yates, and that forces out way wide. Gary Smith through the gravel, does dig himself out the other side, but in so doing loses a big chunk of time. He's going to have to work hard to get back onto the tail of O'Reilly, Yates and Newman, who are 1, 2 and 3 coming out of the hairpin. And Smith has lost more places going up the hill because he lost momentum through the gravel. So he's down into, what, 6th place now. Next target, therefore, number 31, Marco Agam. He's had a spot of rain on the camera lens. They dive down towards Surtees. Gary Smith fighting back. The championship leader getting it sideways through Surtees with 19 more minutes still to run. And drama coming out of the corner because a big spin there. Around went possibly Mark Roberts, that was, but as the cars come towards Hawthorns for the race lead, Michael O'Reilly keeping David Yates at bay. Now David Yates is up from 10th on the grid, really good first few laps, and there he is with good pace, taking the fight to O'Reilly, keeping Jeff Newman behind him in 3rd spot with the yellow cage on the car. David Yates in the blue and white livery, but it's Michael O'Reilly that leads as they head towards Sheen Curve once more. This is lap 4. Another man to watch, number 47, Luke Rosewell, working his way through the pack. He's up into 6th place now, number 47, Luke Rosewell, and has done the fastest lap of the race. More tyre squeal as they come out of Stirling's, down now towards the right-hander at Clark Curve. This to end, lap number 4. There is Luke Rosewell in 47. So now, 6th at the start of the lap becomes 4th at the end of it, courtesy in part of Gary Smith's woes. To the inside line goes David Yates. He goes for the race lead as they break the beam, virtually side by side, but David's got the inside line going up towards Paddock. Levels there with O'Reilly, and he goes through. So David Yates leads, but he goes wide, but he does just about regroup. But while all this is going on, Luke Rosewell, look, he's towing himself into the mix in 4th. He's bringing with him Marco Agam and Gary Smith. They're right there, so it's going to be 6 for the lead in a minute. And Yates up front is in the box seat, and what he wants to do now is try and break away and let everybody else squabble behind him. But that is much easier said than done in Caterham Racing. As to the inside line now goes 47. This is for 3rd place, Luke Rosewell. Makes the move. Does he make it stick, though? Coming out of the corner, he's got the tighter line. Yep, rounds Jeff Newman out wide, and he goes through. So from 9th on the grid, Luke Rosewell, a bit like David Yates, chipping his way forward all the while. And Newman's the one that loses out there, look, because he gets well shuffled back in the pack. He's down to 6th for the race lead. Down towards Hawthorns, Michael O'Reilly goes back through. David Yates with him, and then Luke Rosewell up into 3rd position. Yates goes to the inside line as they make that run once more up towards Westfield. And Luke Rosewell, who's raced Formula Ford 1600s, he's raced with the Classic Sports Car Club, he's done the Honda Civic Trophy, he's got lots of experience at different things, using that to good effect. Quickest lap of the race has been done by Rosewell, and a big slide in the background, which was, looking at the numbers, Gary Smith, who got all crossed up, not for the first time in this race. The championship leader having an energetic race. In fact, I said it was 6 for the lead, it's nearly 8. Andrew Donaldson and Caroline Everett are not that far off the back of that queue either as they pour down once more into Clark Curve. Up to the timing line. So Michael O'Reilly has the advantage, but David Yates pulls to the outside line, gets the tow. The slipstream carries him alongside beautifully, but it's the outside line, which is not ideal. And so he slots back in behind. And Andrew Donaldson, getting a tow off all of these ahead, now does the fastest lap of the race. But he's dropped a place, in fact, going into Paddock Hill Bend because Caroline Everett, by the look of it, has scrabbled by. So it's O'Reilly from Yates once more for the race lead. The progress of Jason McCormack, he's got himself into the top 10 up from the back of the grid. I said a win was going to be a tall order. Even at the moment, the podium is looking a tall order because he's got quite a bit of real estate to make up before he catches this leading, what have we got? 8 cars, really, in a line for the lead. But it is doable. Onto the Grand Prix section they come. Now, this fight rages on. Gary Smith gets up alongside Marco Agam, and as they head down towards the right of Hawthorns, there's a change for 2nd place as well, as Yates goes back ahead of Rosewell, reasserts himself. Luke Rosewell conscious that he needs to be on the attack. He's conscious of not leaving the door open, though, and allowing anybody else up and past him. Field pouring out of the right of Westfield once more, up towards Sheen Curve. Number 19 goes through. That is Stuart Bell, still hunting his way forward as the cars now come up towards Stirling. So Stuart Bell second on the grid, not being able to make up ground in the way that others that qualified lower down have been able to catch and pass and pick their way forward. So the leader remains Michael O'Reilly. Up towards the line he comes. One more in the book, and behind him is David Yates. Then at the end of lap 6, getting a toe look, pulls out as exactly for fourth place. Third and fourth place is De Rosewell, and now Gary Smith, a virtual mirror image. Gary Smith in the black car on the outside line. Just about has enough racing room. He's on the outside line all the way up to Druids as well. The spots of rain are getting a bit more obvious, by the way, on our part of the circuit, as it is still O'Reilly that leads up at Druids, but Gary Smith is the one that gets run out wide, partly by Rosewell. Also up and past him there comes Marco Agam. And you've got Andrew Donaldson in the mix as well. Jeff Newman, who was well placed early on, did lead, still down in 7th in the yellow and blue car. Is he biding his time, or is he genuinely struggling now to get himself back through the mix? He's got 14 minutes in which to do it. To the Grand Prix loop once again. Lap 7 this is. Number 19, Stuart Bell, 8th at the expense of Caroline Everett. 2nd and 3rd are side by side. David Yates on the inside hangs onto the place there. To the outside line goes Luke Rosewell. And the cars now sprint once again along the Derek Minter straight. Set them up for Westfield. Gary Smith goes through, way up the curb on the inside, and having to correct the bouncing car, though, as Marco Agam. And that brings closer to them both Andrew Donaldson and also Jeff Newman. Out of Sheen Curve, all the pressure is on Michael O'Reilly because he's got them stacked up behind. Marco Agam there goes by. And now the run in towards Clark Curve to complete lap 7. Approaching halfway in this 25-minute race. Again, David Yates gets the toe, pulls to the outside line, gets his nose in front and gets the job done this time. So it almost looks as though Michael O'Reilly hit the brakes very early and was happy to slot back in behind him. And if that is the plan, it might just work to give him the move coming up towards Druids, because straight away he's on the case, goes to the outside line though. Luke Rosewell tries to rather cheekily get up on the inside. Gary Smith is back into 4th. But O'Reilly is having to go really defensive now, you can see, to keep Luke Rosewell, the blue, white and red car, in 3rd place at bay. Then you've got Gary Smith 4th. And Jeff Newman continues to push on, down currently in 7th. But is he about to make a move against Donaldson, who's on the inside there? Donaldson, in turn, is on the attack against Marco Agam. And Jason McCormack, in the meantime, is still in 10th place. Now, his last lap was a 42.6. He's not yet closing on those ahead of him, but not for the want of trying. The leading, what have we got? 8 cars, all in a line, pouring their way down through, leading 9 cars, pouring their way down through Hawthorne. Slippery surface flag out there, which might be for liquid, might just be for some debris on the road as well. It's just to warn them of a hazard ahead. Wasn't there a lap ago? Through Westfield they turn, drop out of sight, climb the hill again. Down through Stirling's turns, Michael O'Reilly still on the attack. David Yates 5,000ths ahead when they broke the beam, but he was able to get the lead well in advance of Paddock Hill Bend. The spots of rain that were over here have disappeared for the moment, so teasing the drivers a little bit as they come out of Clark Curve. Up towards the line they will come, and it remains Yates ahead of O'Reilly, ahead of Rosewell, 1, 2 and 3. 8 laps in the books. And as the cars dive down towards Paddock Hill Bend, to the inside line in his 4th place, Gary Smith tries to unsettle now Michael O'Reilly. Luke Rosewell up into 2nd, as you can see, with the red cage all over the back of David Yates. Now this is the drier part of the circuit. Reports come from Westfield that it is quite damp up there now, hence that slippery surface flag, just to warn them of the change that the track conditions have had, and also how it's not consistent around the racetrack, which is a driver's real nightmare, because you don't know what to expect where. Michael Agam goes through. He's dropping back in the pack now. Jeff Newman up into 6th. Have a look. There he is with the blue and yellow car. So he led early on. He's stayed in the peloton, as it were, in this leading group. And he's not done yet as the cars sprint their way down towards Hawthorne. There, Stuart Bell in the red car that qualified second, having shed bodywork, fighting back. David Yates retakes the lead. Michael O'Reilly retakes second. Down to third goes Luke Rosewell. But this now, the more slippery, more testing part of the circuit with 10 more minutes on the clock. Squeal of tyres. It can't be that wet. 93 goes by, which is Andrew Donaldson. And Jeff Newman now crawling all over the back of him. As to the outside line of Rosewell goes Gary Smith. Absolutely toe-to-toe they go. But Rosewell comes out ahead as they break now and turn left into Stirlings. Out of the corner they go, down towards Clark Curve. Into the right-hander then, so it is number 15, David Yates, this time around that leads. Has he led more laps than anybody? Possibly. There's that slippery surface flag again because the rain is doing its best to come back on this side of the circuit as well now. Past the pits, Rosewell on the outside grabs the advantage. Sorry, tell you a lie. O'Reilly on the outside grabs the advantage. And with those spots of rain falling once more, the drivers having to cope not only with the battles, but this changing track surface. Right, Druids, the corner, and it is back into the lead, O'Reilly. Yates second, Rosewell third. Fourth, Gary Smith. You've got Donaldson, Newman, Bell, Agam, Everett, and then now in 10th place, Cameron Cooper, rounding out the order. Into the last 10 minutes of the race now as the leaders dive down towards Surtees once more, and that loops you round onto the Grand Prix extension. So there's the race leader. It is Michael O'Reilly back up front. Stuart Bell also recovering, having dropped chunks of time early on in the race, very early on in the race. A bit like Jeff Newman, fighting back as the race wears on. 8.5 minutes on the clock. So there, the leading 8 go through. And there, behind in 9th place, the white car, Caroline Everett. 10th, you've got behind Cameron Cooper for Team Parker Racing. Jason McCormack in 11th spot, fell away a lap ago. But again, with the cars squabbling up the road, there is the chance they can latch onto the back of them before the very end of the race here. The leaders then turn their way out of Stirlings. 1-2-2 goes by, which is Jason McCormack, the Macmillan Motorsport car. Less than 8 minutes to go as they come out of Clark Curve, and there in the gravel, number 31, that is Marco Agem, the former hill climber and karter, and he's stuck deep, and that right on the edge of the road, I would fear, might end up with an interruption to the race here as the leaders dive up towards paddock. David Yates takes the lead back again on the outside line, but he's going to drift deep into the corner. Door is wide open. And back up the inside comes Michael O'Reilly there to try to retake the advantage as they head into the hairpin. Almost 3 wide there because of the outside line again goes Luke Rosewell, and Jeff Newman look back into the game. The yellow and blue car on the inside line as they dropped out of Druids into Graham Hill Bend. He's going to be 5th, is he? He's going to have to give way on the outside. Yep, he is, but he's back at the races now. He's part of that leading group once again. Along Cooper Straight through Surtees they will turn. So Michael O'Reilly up front. And I think Marco Agem may, in fact, have been able to dig himself out of that gravel and get back into the race. So he has. He's down in 20th spot. Oh, no, he's not yet broken the beam. No, he's still possibly in the gravel. So let's see whether that car is still near the edge of the road, because either way it's going to be a yellow flag zone at Stirlings. It's not the easiest place to consider overtaking anyway, but it certainly ain't going to be an overtaking opportunity if there's a waved yellow there. So as the leaders make the climb up towards Dingledale and then Sheen Curve for a 6.5 minutes on the clock and into the corner, there's the yellow flag being waved, so no overtaking is permitted. And there is the car, very, very close to the edge of the road. And quite often if a car is that close, it would be a safety car to get it out of the way, but the officials, I think, trusting the drivers to respond to that waved yellow flag to go appropriately slowly, and therefore it's less of an issue as long as they all respect the flags. So 6 minutes to go. Up towards the timing line they come, and again it is O'Reilly versus Yates. David goes for the outside line, Michael on the in, and David Yates gets his nose in front as they head into the corner, and he's got the job done. But again, by the time he's slowed the car down, he can't get to the apex, runs wide, but he does come out ahead, keeps that race lead as they break for the hairpin now. Through the corner, on the top of the hill, a really steep climb, and then plunge all the way down into Graham Hill Bend, run wide on the exit, too wide, and you end up being in jeopardy of exceeding the track limits, but all of these drivers being terribly respectful of track limits. As to the inside line there, Luke Rosewell looks to fight back against Gary Smith. And he does dive up the inside, full send that going into Surtees. Smith's on the outside line, but actually comes out ahead still holds onto the place. 5 more minutes on the clock as the cars drop down to the right-hand Hawthorns corner. To the outside line, Jeff Newman. On the inside there was Luke Rosewell. Jeff gets squeezed up wide over the curb, but he's 5th. He's going for 4th, but he ain't going to do it on the outside of Westfielders. There, look, Michael O'Reilly now has to fend off Gary Smith, a championship leader. Couldn't find a way up on the inside, so slots back in behind as they get to Sheen Curve. Into the last 5 minutes now. Still those double yellows wave, no overtaking allowed at Stirling's, and also you're meant to be going slower, which the officials can monitor as well. So there is the car being retrieved and down towards Clearways. Then Clark Curve, clock ticks on down, and 4.5 minutes are on the clock. Stuart Bell accelerates his way in that red car you can see in the background up towards the line. But David Yates, look now, has got away by a couple of lengths because on that lap, Michael O'Reilly was rather busy defending from Gary Smith, and Smith goes right round the outside now. If the drivers have got their countdown on the display on the car, they'll know that there are only 4 minutes to go, and now is the time to push, and you can see that 1 or 2 drivers are doing just that. David Yates strives to get away from them, but Gary Smith up into 2nd spot, and the battle is on for 3rd as now on the inside line, Luke Rosewell goes ahead there. So Michael O'Reilly, who has been there or thereabouts all the way through, now has been shuffled back in the pack to 4th. 3 3/4 minutes are still to go. Brake, turn left, onto the Grand Prix loop once again here. Jeff Newman, who I thought was working his way forward, has dropped back in actual point of fact as the cars now run towards Hawthorns. Going through there, look, number 9, Caroline Everett, who's also been chipping up the order. So she started 8th, dropped back a little bit, back up into 7th. Out of Hawthorns, and the race leader, the new race leader, Gary Smith, absolutely on the giddy limit there. Runs it wide over the curb, and that brings David Yates back onto his tail as they go now through Westfield. Luke Rosewell still running in 3rd. Any one of these could win it, and David Yates looks for the inside line going up towards Sheen and then thinks better of it. Those yellows might still be out round the corner. They are indeed. So yes, he does lift it and drops back in 2nd spot. The car's almost out of the way, however, because it's no longer on the edge of the racetrack. As the leaders drop down, they're going to do 2 more laps, aren't they, looking at the clock here? So through they will come. A flying lap is 1 minute and 45. There's going to be about 2.5 on the clock when they get to the line. So now back into the lead, in fact possibly for the first time into the lead, Gary Smith, and the battle's on for 2nd as Luke Rosewell this lap comes up to attack David Yates. Down towards paddock they go. Another squeal of tyres as they round the right-hander. Now the climb up towards Druids. And now Gary Smith showing why he's the championship leader, why he had those 2 good race results at Donington. Because he's getting himself very much, after a win at Donington, looking as though it's going to be 2 out of 3 for him within the 1600 division of this championship. What also about there, Stuart Bell, number 19, the lightweight model, showed a wheel arch up to the inside now of Michael O'Reilly, who late race is fading because he's lost places and he's not looking as though he's going to be able to get them back either. Bell on the attack in that red car, goes for the inside line, down they come towards Hawthorns, can't do it, slots back in behind once again. 3 for the race lead, Gary Smith not getting away, and David Yates lines up for a go on the inside heading into Westfield, and that gives Luke Rosewell a chance to think about the outside, but he runs wide. Gary Smith, the leader, goes very wide and loses momentum, just cuts across the front to get the place again, and there's a change imminent for 3rd, isn't there? Andrew Donaldson was on the attack until we got to the yellow flag zone, and just as he lifted, so the yellow flags were withdrawn. So, by a split second or so, he had to back out of that manoeuvre, and having lifted, he's also dropped a chunk of time, and he's got people crawling all over the back of him. Rosewell now for the inside of Yates, can't do it, start the last lap this time, and the 3 leaders have just been able to pull away enough, I think, from Donaldson, so that there is a discernible break between the 2 groups. 3 for the lead, and then 4 for 4th, over the line. Onto the last lap they go. More spots of rain on the camera lens, and there Jeff Newman goes for the inside line. can't do it as they turn their way into paddock. Now starting the last lap, Gary Smith, Donington winner, leads the way. David Yates second, Luke Rosewell third. That's Donaldson for fourth. Newman is fifth, sixth is O'Reilly, seventh is Bell. Rosewell goes out wide at Druids and loses a length or so, which means that those two different packs start to close a little bit, because his loss of time is the bridge that sort of backs him up into Andrew Donaldson in fourth place. But he fights back and he's on the inside of David Yates along Cooper Straight now. Break for Surtees, he's going to go through. Yes! Breaks very late and goes through, but then goes a little bit wide. But I think he's done enough. He has. He comes out ahead. On the attack on the inside line there, look, 93. Andrew Donaldson tries to go for third against David Yates, and on this very last lap for the first time, Donaldson is into a podium place. He did the fastest lap a while ago, way back on lap 5. This is lap 15, but Andrew Donaldson has been chipping his way forward from 12th on the grid, and he's actually not done yet. Look, he's on the attack of Rosewell. He goes to the outside line and easily motors his way round. Really impressive stuff. Now, surely a win is out of reach because he's just a little bit too far back from Gary Smith, but Andrew Donaldson, what a last couple of laps. Rosewell fights back on the inside and Sterling goes through. David Yates gets all sideways. He runs out wide and that causes cars to scatter to the left. Jeff Newman's going to get up and past him as well. So time for a deep breath as they come to the line. It is going to be Gary Smith to win. That's the easy part out of all of this. Luke Rosewell is on for second, but only just, because if Andrew Donaldson can get a tow, he might be able to dive out of the draft. Gary Smith wins. Rosewell second, but only just ahead of Donaldson in third. And the rest are headed home by Jeff Newman fourth, Michael O'Reilly fifth, two early race leaders, sixth Stuart Bell, seventh Caroline Everett, eighth was Cameron Cooper. David Yates ended up ninth after his moment at Stirling's. All it took was that to lose momentum and he dropped down the order. Jason McCormack 10th from last on the grid, got himself back up there. And you can see now that weather conditions are changing and not for the better as the spots of rain continue to fall at Brands Hatch. But a really impressive last couple of laps by Andrew Donaldson. But Gary Smith timing it as ever to perfection. You have to know when to hold and when to fold in Caterham racing. And the man that won a restarted race at Donington wins this unaffected race and does so in style. So drama's right at the very start, but thankfully we only lost that couple of cars, John Styring being early on and Marco Achem sort of two-thirds of the way through the race with his dramas over at Stirling's. And it's Gary Smith that wins from Luke Rosewell and Andrew Donaldson in third place. But Andrew Donaldson's drive to get the fastest lap early on and then get himself into the top three, impressive indeed. There's another race to come later on in the day for the 1600 division. There's also a 420R race to look forward to. That is going to be in about 45 minutes time here at Brands Hatch, and the 1600s back on track at 6 o'clock this evening, all being well. So the cars marshalled back into the pit lane, and good stuff as ever from the Toyo Tyres 7 race series. Gary Smith then takes the race win, and his winning margin, a second and a half. That's huge in Caterham terms. Luke Rosewell second ahead of Andrew Donaldson. Jeff Newman fourth ahead of Michael O'Reilly and then Stuart Bell. Caroline Everett for seventh from Cameron Cooper and David Yates. Jason McCormack last on the grid, 22nd, but he finishes in 10th. So great racing from the Caterhams, and let's have a look back at some of the best bits of our first 1600 race of the weekend. That began with the poleman, Michael O'Reilly, stealing a march on Stuart Bell. But Stuart didn't make a great start, lost out on the opening lap as poor old John Styring was tagged into a spin. Rob Warner was his aggressor, and it put John Styring out of the race. There was the contact. Around went Styring, and he was only heading in one direction. It was for the barriers, hit it with the back, hit it with the front. And from then, for the next 25 minutes, it was the constant shuffling of the pack as Michael O'Reilly, Jeff Newman, Gary Smith, David Yates and others all had a turn at the lead. David Yates bravely getting himself up on the inside line. Jeff Newman got shuffled back a little bit, so late raced in Michael O'Reilly. And although Gary Smith was mid-race way out wide through the gravel, he was able to fight his way back into contention and got himself into the race lead for the last 2 or 3 laps. The last 5 minutes were where it all really came to a head, and Gary Smith putting himself into the mix very definitely so that he came through victorious. Others weren't so fortunate. Spins and dramas aplenty. David Yates taking the fight to Michael O'Reilly. but all the while Gary Smith was closing back up, moved himself through into third, then into second, and was on target for the race win. David Yates looked as though he was doing a grand job at one stage, but then on the last lap shuffled himself back down the order after a small error at Stirling's, which is where we'd lost Marco Agan a few laps earlier. And after a long waved yellow period, the road was clear just at the end of the race. An opportunity for overtaking, and it gave Luke Rosewell his second place back on that last lap, as others decided they would go a rally crossing down at Paddock Hill Bend. But Gary Smith ultimately getting himself into the race lead, and the checkered flag would go his way. Gary Smith the winner ahead of Luke Rosewell, and Andrew Donaldson rounding out the top three, but he was only just missing out on second as they crossed the line virtually side by side. So these cars back on track at 6 o'clock, and we'll have the 420s on the circuit at 2:30. So join us for more Toyo Tyres 7 Race Series action during the afternoon. Bye for now.